Hello and welcome to our lesson. We shall be looking at entity relationship modeling, and specifically we are going to look at two things. One, we shall be looking at the symbols that we use whenever we are drawing the ER diagram. Thereafter, we are going to be looking at what is the purpose as to why we need ER diagrams. Just a quick recap. An ER diagram denotes or expresses the overall logical structure of a database graphically. We know that an ER diagram normally has quite a number of components, and we talked about them. We normally have entities, we normally have attributes, we normally have relationship, we normally have cardinality ratios. All these four components, there is a way in which they are joined together, there is a way in which they are linked together, and they denote or they express the logical structure of a database. Remember that when we are shifting from an ER diagram to a database, an entity ends up becoming the relation or the table. The attribute ends up becoming the field within that particular relation. The relationship denotes how our relations are linked together through the primary key, foreign key, and so on and so forth. The cardinality ratios helps us to know in which relation are we supposed to map our primary key, in which relation are we supposed to map our foreign key. An ER diagram consists of a number of symbols. The first symbol that we are going to be looking at is the rectangle, and the rectangle is denoted by this particular symbol, which of course is for the rectangle, and it is used when you want to represent an entity. So in an ER diagram, when you see a rectangle, you automatically know that that's an entity. The second one is the ellipse, which is indicated by that oval shape. It's normally used to represent an attribute. So in the case you have an entity like student, and you have an attribute like student ID, the student ID is going to be represented with this. Then we have diamond, which is represented by this particular symbol. It denotes a relationship. For example, you could have a lecturer teaches a unit. Teaches is a relationship. So we are going to express that relationship using this particular symbol. Then we have the line, which is denoted by that form of a straight line, which links an entity to a relationship, or it links an entity to an attribute. Then we have another double ellipse, which is represented in this manner. It's normally used when you have attributes that are multi-valued, that can have more than one value to represent it. Then we have dashed ellipse, which is represented in this particular manner. It's used to denote what we refer to as derived attributes. An example is age, which you can derive from the date of birth of a given person. Then we have the double lines, which is used to represent a total participation. If we have an entity that participates totally within a given relationship set, for example, that every student must be supervised, that kind of participation is a total participation. So we are going to see that we represent using a double line. Let's take an example. We have two entities here, customer and loan. You can see that we have represented them using the rectangle. We have a relationship here. A customer is a borrower of a loan. We have represented that using the diamond. Then we have the lines, which are denoting the relationship between entities and the relationship, or between entities and the different attributes. The attributes are represented with the ellipse, as you can see, and we link them to an entity. We do not link them to a relationship. One thing to note, that when you're dealing with the attributes, the attribute that becomes the primary key, we normally underline it. So for example, you can see in this case, customer has the customer ID underlined. Why? The customer ID is going to be the unique identifier among these different attributes. In the same case for the entity loan, the loan number is the unique identifier. What do we mean when we talk of cardinality ratios? It helps express what number of entities does one entity relate with regard to the other entity. Let's give an example. A customer may have no loan. That's why we have a 0. A customer may apply 1 loan. Or a customer may apply many loans. So the range from 0 to asterisk denotes that a customer can have no loan, or 1 loan, or many loans. This is how we express how the customer participates within this kind of relationship. On the other hand, when we are moving from the loan backward to the customer, a loan, for a loan to exist, it means it must have been applied. So a loan can belong to one customer, and a loan can only belong to one particular customer. So long as you see a loan, it is associated with only one customer. And the reason as to it's associated with only one customer is because of the presence of the loan number. What are the purposes of the uses of an ER diagram? 1. They help give us a conceptual view of the database. If you look at this example, graphically we are in a position to know the entities, the relationship, and the attributes. So even before we design the database, we have a reference point of how our database will end up looking like. Number 2 is that an ER diagram can be used with the different DBMSs. So it's not dependent with a particular DBMS software. The other advantage is that by drawing an ER diagram, you can be in a position to identify some of the problems that are likely to exist when you end up designing your database using a suitable software. I want to thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.